Well, so a day after Dr. Bawumia met Ghanaians to tell us about the economy and what the government is doing to restore it back to normalcy, we have been analyzing some of the facts and figures as displayed by His Excellency Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. And we'll continue because it's quite a large document. We need to touch on a few things and see the tangibles which affects Ghanaians directly. And we're going to continue with this analysis this afternoon. I'll be joined again by Professor John Gachi, Dean, University of Ghana Business School, and also Dr. Patrick Assuming, who's a senior lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School. Earlier on, I had a discussion with Jonathan Asante, who is a political analyst, who will join us again on Good Afternoon Ghana. We'll be going into it. If you have an issue, you can also join us via Facebook. It's Metro TV Ghana. Will be streaming live there. Send us your comments, and we'll read them in the course of the program. But for now, my name is Ania Fompo. Let's take a break. We'll be back shortly.
Deaths from COVID so far have totaled 1,445, and the total case count as at yesterday, the total cases in Ghana was 42 cases. So we have managed the COVID very well, and the expenditure was necessary for us to do so and to save lives. Some commentators and analysts have argued that the COVID expenditures could not be the only reason for the large fiscal deficit that was recorded in 2020 and 2021. In fact, I agree with this view because the data supports it, and I'll show you why. Comparing the fiscal deficit in 2020 and 2021 between Ghana and other sub-Saharan African countries, the data shows that COVID expenditures alone were not sufficient to explain the increase in our fiscal deficit. The fiscal deficit to GDP in Ghana increased by threefold compared to 1.23 for Nigeria, 1.02 for Egypt, and 2.43 for Cote d'Ivoire. In addition to COVID-19, there were two major items of expenditure. In addition to COVID-19, there were two major items of expenditure that are critical to understanding the evolution of the fiscal deficit and the debt stock: the banking sector cleanup and the energy sector excess capacity payments. The data shows that the three items, when you look at COVID expenditure, the banking sector cleanup, and the excess capacity payments, amounted to 50.1 billion Ghana cedis. That is the equivalent of some $7 billion for just these three.
All right, you're welcome back. And so those are some excerpts from the delivery by Dr. Bawumia yesterday when he was talking about the economy at the TESCON program in Kaswa. I'm told we have been joined on the line via Zoom by Dr. Patrick Assuming, who is a senior lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School. Well, thank you for your time, Doc. Thank you for your time and you're welcome. Good afternoon to you. Hello, Doc.
Good afternoon.
All right, thank you.
Good afternoon to viewers. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us as well. Dr. Sumi, did you, make some time to watch the Vice President yesterday, and what are your first opinions?
Yes, I did listen to the speech, and then I've also looked at the document. And I think largely what the Vice President said was what I expected to happen. Because if you look at in the weeks leading to this speech, the President has spoken, the Finance Minister has spoken, and essentially the trend is the same. So the economy was doing well before the COVID, and since the COVID, we've had some challenges. So that's essentially broadly that's what the message has been. I think the Vice President largely said the same, except that he brought a lot of data to try and make his point, and then also he did spend a lot more time talking about the digitization agenda, where we are and where we are going to move forward. We are going to go with it going forward. And then he did speak about some other things that maybe the president and the finance minister didn't touch on. He spoke about unemployment in a little bit more detail, and he did a lot of comparison. Also, he did compare Ghana with other countries since the COVID, but he also did a lot of comparison with the previous regime, which is something he likes to do.
Let's talk about that digitalization, because it's been one of the criticisms now against the vice president. But he explained why it is necessary for us as a country to focus on digitalization, because there's a direct link between that and the economy itself. If we want the economy to, boost and be robust and match up to international standard. Did he have a good economic point by doing that analysis?
I think as for the importance of the digitization agenda, I don't think we can downplay it. I think it's a very important aspect. I think since the COVID has taught us that, it's very, all aspects of our lives can be improved by the digitization. Since the COVID, I mean, we were forced to do our teaching online. A lot of businesses have to move online. But even beyond that, we see that through that you can create, a lot of people can create businesses. It's an avenue for business creation. And that is on the micro side. On the macro side, I think where the digitization really has the potential to help with government finances. It has the ability to help us rope more people who are in the informal sector into the tax-paying bracket. And I think, we have heard when the government has been speaking recently, how because we've digitized properties, it should be easier for us to collect more property taxes. And then also, if you look at the sort of things that we are doing with requiring that you use your Ghana card, which is now a tax identification number, to register your mobile SIM and to register or to use that for banking transactions. And the way we are connecting those systems to different aspects of the economy, I think it's definitely, when we are done with all of that, it definitely has the potential to help expand the revenue bracket. So I think for that aspect, in terms of what the digitization agenda can do for the economy, I think that one is very important.
How about the e-levy? Let's talk about that. There's been also some analysis and criticisms that e-levy being more or less the most important component right now of government policies to help us generate some amount of money to do what we want to do. It was, spoken about, but in a very subtle manner. The vice president didn't seem to hit on it as much as people were expecting, even though I'm not so sure what people wanted him to say on the e-levy in particular.
Yes, I think, the document is 129 pages. And I think when we check, you see that e-levy was mentioned only once.
Right.
And I think given the centrality of the role, I mean, in recent times, we've been told that the e-levy it's almost like the silver bullet to all our problems, right? You know, in order to convince Ghanaians to accept the e-levy, we've been told that to create jobs, to help us to fix our roads, to help us to do so many things. But I mean, it was quite surprising that the vice president made no mention, almost no mention at all, in terms of what the e-levy this role is going to do. I mean, my suspicion is that, like many other economists, maybe he doesn't think that the e-levy is a good tax to impose. But that's my speculation.
Well, he's actually earlier
Because
on made
otherwise,
some comments about the fact that he doesn't support tasking Momo transactions. He was specific with Momo transactions. But e-levy goes broader, and of course, just Momo transaction, just one of the components of e-levy, and so it should be easier for him to do a good analysis of it, even if earlier he had said that he doesn't support charging or taxing Momo transactions.
Yeah, I think, look, as someone who has been pushing the digitization agenda, and then it's not just a digitization agenda, I think he's been at the forefront of encouraging people to embrace, and then also the financial inclusion agenda. So from that point of view, you may understand why an e-levy, which many economists, myself included, think that it's really not the way to go. So maybe you can understand why he would have stayed away from that. Because, you cannot talk about, you cannot support the e-levy, and then when you have also been championing that we should do as much as we can to bring more people into the financial bracket. So in that sense, I will understand why he probably stayed away from that topic.
Let me bring Professor Gachi in. He's joined us via Zoom as well. Prof, thank you for your time also, and you're welcome. I will let you respond to the same question on the e-levy. Were you or were you not satisfied with the few words said by Vice President about the e-levy?
Thank you very much. If you look at the lecture very well, it is meant to respond to issues raised against the economy and Dr. Bawumia himself in terms of his silence over many developments within the economy. And one of the issues raised is the e-levy. Therefore, it is expected to be the number one issue to discuss when you are talking about the economy. It was widely circulated that Dr. Bawumia is not in favor of taxing Momo, which is under the e-levy. It is also very clear that if indeed Dr. Bawumia was not converted along the line, then he felt sidelined in terms of his cabinet members not buying into his idea. And that was the reason why he didn't participate in the consultation and championing, encouraging Ghanaians to embrace e-levy. So it could be that there is a sharp division between him and the government on the e-levy, or he just felt that in order to keep his reputation within the party that he's seeking to become a flag bearer and in the eye of the public. But I think the choice not to make categorical statement about the e-levy has created more problem for him than if he were to make some comment by being frantic. For example, he was indicating that we have huge problem from COVID-19 and from the development in Russia and Ukraine. And so perhaps maybe that has deepened the fiscal situation for which there is a need to raise extra revenue at all costs And that is why, even though in the beginning he didn't like the e-levy, but now he has no choice in the interest of revenue generation. That would have been a fairer comment to Ghanaians and to his person in terms of his position on the taxing Momo in particular in the past. But as it is now, he has actually lost a very important opportunity, and now he's indecisive as to whether to let the people know that he has a problem with his government or not.
In this morning, Member of Parliament, Honorable Adongo, actually made a statement that he missed the opportunity to please satisfy or answer questions on the minds of worried Ghanaians. Is that the picture you also got?
No, I think Dr. Bawumia doesn't see the public like that. You see the public are people that he can speak to their mind, to follow him, rather than considering the people to be sharp, to be aware of what is going on, and to try to win the people to himself. He believed the people should follow his thinking, and that is what he was doing. So he didn't have the people as the center of the discussion in terms of trying to provide relevant information to them, but he is providing information in such a way that he has a superior idea. It is the people who didn't have better understanding. You remember him said that by the time you live here, you have better understanding of the economy. So right. He thought he knew more than the people, and he was letting them to understand, not to provide information to satisfy their questions.
I'm not so sure if your abilities of reading body language and political analysis, if we get a political analyst, we'll speak with him. But with the point you've just made, is this something that is deliberately being done by him not bringing the people at par to his thinking? Or he is not sure if people really, is it like he doesn't really know that people know or people don't know? Or maybe it's just political?
Yeah, I think a lot of things were happening there. There were people at that function who didn't understand, who are not supporting Bawumia for his flag bearership in the party. In fact, you need to look at it. I believe the political scientists will help us. If you look at the reaction of the people there, sometimes you feel like crying because it's as if they are not there. You watch very senior party leaders, they were on their phone. So you need to put all those things in perspective. That is actually a struggle to gain recognition after within the party there have been serious disagreement as to whether his statement that he made in the past and perhaps continue to make is a disservice at this point in time for the party or not. So I believe if you put Dr. Bawumia to that test, I believe he was speaking under difficult situation. People were not reflective. Their actions were not reflective of what they are being told over there. So I consider it to be a very difficult internal political struggle that he needs to discuss or talk about the economy. And again, it is very clear that the public seem to lose some confidence in him because most of the things he said, they are the opposite is happening around. You see, nobody forced Dr. Bawumia to tell the people of Ghana that he has arrested the depreciation and give it to the key to the IGP. I think nobody forced him to say those things. Nobody forced him to say there will be one district, one factory across the country. Nobody forced him to say that, there will be one village, one dam. Nobody forced him to say that plenty for food and job will resolve all the problems of this country. But if they give you the import data of this country, you realize that we have scaled up our import of our agricultural produce. So people look at him as if it's not the government that is a failure, but it is Dr. Bawumia who is a failure. And that's a huge negative responsibility placed on him. So I think you need to look at it from that perspective.
We'll come into the numbers. Let me go to Jonathan Asante-Okyere, political analyst I earlier on spoke with on the news. Jonathan, so I don't know if you get the same message that is rather a blot on Dr. Bawumia as a failure and not the government, as a whole. Because in the communication line, and yesterday I raised it on social media, that when you're doing a presentation and you say, the opposition is waiting to hear from Dr. Bawumia, it gives me the impression that the government pays attention to the opposition more than the citizen that is feeling the pinch. Yes, opposition is part of citizen, but it makes your listening ability skewed to a certain point and not the generality of the public. Hello, Jonathan.
Yeah.
Yes, kindly unmute. Yeah.
So the body language, as it were, that I gathered in terms of his presentation was that of a group of people who were not so much enthused about what the good Vice President was saying. Apart from the youth who were, as you know, whether they hear something or don't hear anything, they will definitely be shouting. And of course, these are TESCON guys. So what else would you expect? But as Prof. Gachi said, you could see that body language of the presenter himself, sometimes you see him stammering and struggling to convince the listeners. That is something that I realized about him. I also realized that the good old Dr. Bawumia wasn't that confident in convincing the listeners, as it were, when it came to certain issues. Apart from that, you see, we are talking about a vice president who virtually won the election for Mr. Akufo-Addo in 2016. Therefore, he would then be the standard. And he being the standard now is because he has an eye for the presidency. It makes it even a little worse. And as it stands now, looking at the condition of the economy, and you wanting to, climb, as it were, the next ladder, then obviously you are going to bear the brunt of the flag that the citizenry, will be shelling at you. So basically, the vice president is not that confident, and as I said earlier on, for him not to touch on that controversial issue of e-levy, it's a mark of a coward leader.
Do you take it that he didn't touch on it at all?
You cannot appropriate. You see, that's what I was telling you. That the morality of the e-levy is not about being passed, or it's not just about electronic platform. The morality, the controversy is about imposing a levy on the masses who are already struggling, reeling under different economic challenges. Building materials, food, non-food, and all those things. We still impose another levy. It tells you that the economy is struggling. It is a mark of a desperate leader. If we don't do that, as it were, to reduce the deficit, then we may have to borrow again and be borrowing and be borrowing. Obviously, we are definitely going to borrow. But probably if the e-levy functions as we have in mind, then of course, the amount that we are going to borrow, may have to reduce more or less. And then we also have in mind either we are going to use it to hedge or to use it as a collateral to take money in advance. Maybe that will even we'll have to use about 6-7 years to pay off. So the economy, which Dr. Bawumia used as a rallying point to win the heart and minds of Ghanaians, of which Mr. Akufo-Addo had that overwhelming victory in 2016. And what it is now is nothing to write home about. So it is making the man jittery as it stands now. And you could see that some of the issues that he was so confident about in the past, he doesn't have what it takes to talk about them. Why will he not be talking about inflation? Why will he, the effect of it? Why will he not be talking about our debt to GDP? Why will he not be talking about how, petrol prices are impacting on the ordinary Ghanaian? Because all these are negative, aspects of the economy, which he knows very well that, as a communicator, and for that matter, an economist, he cannot easily go there because obviously, and that is equally making Ghanaians angry. Why? Because you are running away from the realities of the economy. And then you are just rehashing and telling us as if you are a hip lifer. This is the first time this government, the first time a government in this, the first time, and then those kinds of things do not really work as of now. At the moment, he's suffering from credibility crisis. And you see, as I said earlier on in the afternoon too, I see that this particular speech that he gave, the address, is more or less trying to position himself in a way that he will outdo his opponent. So it is more or less like a political campaign, and you are addressing the nation on the economy, the state of the economy and other things. And you chose a platform which is run or handled by Tescon,
which is political.
La creme de la creme of the society. Yes, the atmosphere, that particular place to do that address was wrong. If you had done it in the university, in which you are going to have scholars, academicians, civil society groups and other things, and that should have allowed question and answer session so that people can easily probe the kinds of things that he was going to put out there. This is more or less like a propaganda platform, which he used, as it were, yesterday.
How did that platform affect the content of his delivery?
There's no question and answer session. The atmosphere is, you only have people who are speaking your language. You see, we needed to see facial expression of people receiving calls, making calls, and other things. So it meant that not everybody in the auditorium, was interested in the kinds of things that he was saying. Besides, some of them might have thought that this is an old thing that the good vice president is rehashing, and this is nothing new. And in fact, there was nothing new. There was nothing new. It is just much ado about nothing. It is just that people have pushed him to the wall. And as I said, this is a man who virtually won the election for Mr. Akufo-Addo. And he said so many things. Now, these things that he said have become an albatross around his neck because he wants to be the president, to succeed the certain president. So if it were to be the fact that he's living with a president, then it wouldn't have been much of a problem. It would have become the word of the opposition against whoever they are going to pick. But here is the case. If it is not Dr. Bawumia, it's likely going to be Alan. So they are all part of the fray. So none can exculpate themselves from the issues at stake and the problems that all of us find ourselves. So as for the atmosphere, the platform, I think the platform was wrong.
Is that what you think?
Talking about the economy.
Is that what you think prompted the comment by Finance Minister, confirming him as a good candidate after Nana Addo exits? Hello?
This type of politics and the way he's going about it, you should rather come to the lecture room. You should rather come to the lecture room because what he did is purely theoretical. It's not practical. It's more theoretical than practical. And what the finance minister has done is equally going to spark, problems for him. As I said earlier on, the problems in no time it will start coming, rearing its ugly head, because now the battle line is drawn. It appears, and at first it was subtle. Now it is open. The president, the finance minister, is virtually, the right-hand man of the president. And if he's rallying behind Dr. Bawumia, then obviously the president is always, on the side. That one we know. So that in itself is going to create problems for the hierarchy of the party.
All right. I'm privileged to have been joined in the studio by Dr. Kabiru Mahama. He's a technical advisor to the vice president. And within a very short notice, he has been able to, get here. Thank you so much for coming. You're welcome. Good afternoon.
Thank you very much.
I hope you're doing well.
Yeah, I'm doing great.
So are you receiving good reviews after the presentation?
Well, I mean, the reviews, we have mixed reviews, and as a government, we are taking both the lows and the highs. When you have a speech of this particular nature, they will be dissent. The dissenting views are welcome, and there are also commendations. It gave us the opportunity to actually, the government to explain for the first time things that were not known to the Ghanaian public. And I think that if you hear people say that there was nothing new, probably they refuse to see the newness of what was presented. I can give you a litany of issues that were new. For the first time, the vice president explained and answered the question of what have you been using the money you borrow for? I mean, with series of projects, the vice president explained that. The vice president was also explaining about the deficit. For the first time, we've always been, people always say it's not only COVID, it's only COVID that is making your deficit go high. The vice president gave an explanation that we have 3 exceptional expenditure that have never been experienced by this country and other countries haven't experienced. So I can go on and on with the
Actually,
new.
it is something new I noticed, that in a past presentation by the president and the vice president, they never mentioned the banking sector as a problem and the energy sector. Is it an admission that it is the current problem is not only caused by COVID and Russia-Ukraine, but there are other factors which we could have done better?
Thank you. So when you look at the economy as a whole and you look at the economy fundamental, there are certain factors that you shouldn't or you will not associate with COVID or, I mean, what do you call it, Russia-Ukraine war. But there are other factors that you can but to attribute them to the Russian-Ukraine war. So it depends on the variable you choose and the discussion you have on that particular variable and to what extent that variable is being influenced by external factors. That is the only way you can better understand the extent, the magnitude of the war and then of the COVID. And I've seen that on economic growth, no one can convince me that COVID has not got impact on our GDP growth. There's no single person who can convince me. And if you want to say that, I will always challenge you to give me one country that experience increase in growth on the back of COVID. If you are not able to produce, why do you think Ghana should be what do you call it, an island or a kind of a mysterious country that is isolated from the, unless of course you are operating.
But we had inflows that cushioned the COVID impact.
Inflows cushioned the COVID, in fact, to mitigate, but that did not, in fact, to save lives, but not essentially to make companies work. For instance, we had to close companies. We have to, hotels were closed down. That is the productivity loss. So the loss of productivity is what has caused us to, lose a lot of, growth in the economy. So if someone is telling me the economic growth you are saying is COVID, I think that the person will be lacking the basis of what, the mechanism in economic growth if you don't associate COVID to it. Of course, the deficit, GDP deficit we experience of 11.9%, partly you cannot blame COVID, which the vice president admitted that, we have other countries, Cote d'Ivoire, we have Nigeria. What was the deficit situation? When you compare that, Ghana's, they went about 2 to 3 times of those particular countries. So what is accounting for that? The vice president had to provide explanation to that, and that was also for the first time.
When the vice president did that comparison with the countries, US, Nigeria, Ivory Coast, did you guys, and when I say did you guys, within the economic team, did you do the analysis on the economic factors at play in those countries before you came to the conclusion?
Exactly. Because you see, you look at the USA, for instance, you look at what has been the movement of prices of goods and services. And you look at the trend that was existing in 2016, 2018, 1920 up to 2020 when COVID struck. Now, you look at these countries, what have been their relationship in terms of their trade with other countries? USA and Russia, and China, they are trade partners. They do trade between these particular countries. So you look at all those particular variables and look at Ghana's relationship with that of China, Ghana's relationship to that of what you call USA. Virtually, all our most easy imports are coming from China.
Yeah, but that doesn't make our economy equal to China's economy. That's an advanced economy.
We're not saying
the U.S. economy is an advanced economy. You cannot be comparing
that
Ghana
should
to
even
China.
tell you that if an advanced economy is suffering from the hazards of COVID, then talk less or middle income economies or underdeveloping economies. You know why? Because you are struggling. You are struggling to have an economy that is self-reliant in the first place.
Yes, but the point I'm trying to make is these advanced economies have reserves who they release during shocks. You don't have.
We have also released some reserve during shocks. It's just for instance, the Bank of Ghana recently released 2 billion reserves.
And are they comparable to the U.S. reserves? Are they comparable to China reserves?
I don't know whether you get the context of the discussion. I'm not saying that.
I don't know whether you get the context.
I'm not saying that our economy is that same as the United States. The purpose of the comparison that was done was to tell you that, you know what, even advanced economies, as you have mentioned, are not finding it difficult in the context of COVID and Russia-Ukraine war. That was the essence of that particular...
Yeah, okay, admitted.
Yes.
So he's telling us that, I want to tell you that even advanced economies suffered the shocks of COVID. Okay, we have heard you. Let's come back home. What are you doing to us?
Exactly. So that's the next question that we should move to. And I think that it's an important question when you ask, what are you doing to us? And that's what the government said that when we negotiated for a reduction in fuel price, that is one. No matter how small the discussion has been, that is a cushion. Government also is saying that, you know what, on the back of COVID, free electricity was given to. Ghana is the only country in sub-Saharan Africa or in West Africa that is subsidizing fertilizer for his citizens.
I think that we should stop using free electricity and free water because that would be an insult to Ghanaians.
Why do you think it's an insult?
But you know we paid for it.
How do you pay for it?
Didn't we pay for the electricity you gave us? Didn't we pay for the free water you gave us? Subsequently. We were giving these resources at a certain period in time that we needed and we couldn't afford.
Yes.
Good. But going forward, we paid for it.
Exactly.
And you explained.
So
it's no more free.
We shouldn't say it's an insult. I said we gave. I didn't say we are giving. There are two. We are using cement. I'm not saying government is giving free electricity. I'm saying government gave.
Free.
Unless, of course, you tell me that during the period you were not.
So you're saying government gave because the period we've passed the period.
That's the point I'm making. And I'm also saying that government has front-loaded a lot of intervention. Just imagine, I was just having an interview that at this time schools are opening. Parents were going to pay school fees. At this time, parents were going to buy uniforms. Parents were going to buy textbooks. Imagine the burden that it will pose on the Ghanaian public. So, with all humility, government is not trying to say that things are not difficult. In fact, the Ghanaian public is facing the difficulty in the global prices increase. I just read a report before UN is saying that global prices are increasing on the back of Ukraine war and COVID. Just a report released by the UN today. Right. But when we say that, Ghanaian people say, don't say it. The media say, don't say it. But when the UN says it, it's okay. So that is sometimes the
media doesn't say that. The media only.
Good. I'm happy that you are part of those who say
we don't say that. But just a moment. Let's go for a quick breather. This is Good Afternoon Ghana. When we come back, we'll have another round to wrap up. Welcome back to Good Afternoon Ghana. I've been having the discussion with Professor John Gachi, who is a Dean of University of Cape Coast Business School. Also, Dr. Patrick Esumi, Senior Lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School, and Jonathan Asante-Ochi, Political Analyst. I have also been joined in the studio by the Vice President's Technical Advisor, and he's in the person of Dr. Kabiru Mahama. Let me take final words from my men on Zoom, and then I'll come into the studio. Is Mr. Patrick Esumi there? Dr. Esumi? Okay.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, you're there. Okay, great. So a quick one before we wrap up from you, just about a minute, and then I'll come back into the studio and the other guests as well. We're saying that we didn't see anything new from the presentation, but I was earlier on mentioning that the three items that were mentioned by the Vice President, the energy sector, the COVID, and the banking sector, at least he added banking and energy sector to COVID, which shows that he's admitting that the problem is not just caused by COVID and maybe Russia, Ukraine.
I'm not sure to what extent we can say that is a new thing. I mean, if you go back and read the 2022 budget, those things have always been mentioned. I think how much we spend on the financial sector cleanup has always been part of the discussion. The fact that we've been paying excess capacity charges. This is something that we'll be, I'm not. It's something that has been there. It's something
So they mentioned they mentioned the amount spent, but when we were doing the analysis of the economic challenges, it has always been it's been after COVID. We started feeling the shocks after COVID, and even the World Bank came in telling us that you started your challenge. Your challenges actually began before COVID, which was 2019, and that was after we had actually done the banking cleanup.
Yes, I think, I'm making that point because I don't think it's something that we have never known. If you are taking from the point of view that government communicators seem to be placing a lot of emphasis on COVID rather than other things, I think that one is a fair point. But I think we cannot doubt the numbers that the growth numbers were higher before the COVID. There's no two ways about that. From where I sit though, I think we shouldn't assume that, once COVID eventually passes away, and once the Russia-Ukraine conflict is resolved, we will essentially resume the path, because the world economy has changed a little bit. When we were under COVID, some countries have made some strategic choices that will ultimately change their path, going forward.
Right.
So we cannot assume that once we get out of the COVID, life will get back to where it used to be. In any case, we also have to admit that while we were growing pre-COVID, I'm not sure that we created as many jobs as we wanted, and I'm not sure that Ghanaians benefited as much from the growth. One of the big reasons is that growth was primarily driven by, especially in 2017, was primarily driven by the coming on stream of the new oil field, which we know Ghanaians' participation in that area has been very limited. So I think we should still use this period to do some reforms that will change the structure of the growth and change the structure of the economy, so that once we get back to our normal lives, if ever, we know that there have been changes that will ensure that going forward, the economy is going to be more resilient, and we would have diversified our economy, and not necessarily just assume that once COVID goes away and once Ukraine-Russia conflict is gone, our lives will be automatically better.
But do we not see the digitalization agenda as an effort, on that path of trying to win ourselves of economic dependency?
So the digitalization agenda, from where I sit, once done, will help us to ensure that our economy is a lot more formalized, so that it will change our tax elasticity of growth, so that when we are growing, when the economy resumes the path of growth, we automatically should be able to realize more revenue. We shouldn't think that the digitization alone is enough to fundamentally change the structure of our economy. It wouldn't. We need to, change the way we import, and we need to focus more on domestic production and then diversify our exports. The digitization agenda will not in and of itself help us to achieve such a goal.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Patrick Esumi. Let me move to Professor Gachi to also give me his final words. Prof, you're welcome once again. So I have Doc in the studio. I'm sure you've heard a few things that he said. How do you respond to it? Because you've also made some points as far as the presentation was concerned.
Well, I think inconsistency can be very costly for a government. What I'm now getting from yesterday's the presentation and the answer given by the rep in the studio means that the government is now agreeing that it's not only COVID that dismantle the economy. Other factors do. So we cannot rely on only COVID. That is the statement I am getting. And that conflicts the position of the government. That conflicts with the position of the president when he met, when he was in London and giving an interview at BBC. And I think that can be very costly. Now, when we go to banking and energy sector issues, you see, we shouldn't assume that these things are emerging and there are no choices. These are choices that the government made. There are a lot of activities that went on to manage, for example, the exposure of the banks to the energy sector. And clearly, it is to cure that exposure. That was why the Energy Sector Levies Act was put in place. But that energy sector levies have been collateralized. And the way it was supposed to engage in dealing with liquidity challenges that the banks are exposed to in terms of the players in the energy sector has not been effectively managed. And that responsibility should be owned. Again, when you come to the banking sector cleanup, it's a choice. It's a choice. And that choice has led to the collapse of many banks, devastating to many people who were either to living comfortably working in the banking sector and other sectors directly affected by that choice. Yeah. And that choice was supposed to incur about 9 billion costs. And every now and then we are being told the cost has changed and we borrow for that. And that has passed. But what is very important, the government should take responsibility that we have borrowed this amount of money because of the choice we have made. But it's as if for any negative thing about the economy, the leaders are not part. It is something else. That is what is creating credibility problem, and that is what is creating the inconsistency, and that is what is taking away leadership away from the management of the economy. And I believe we should accept that, and we should watch that. It can be very costly when we are engaging, because that engagement is supposed to provide information to various category of people, including the market and those who watch the economy.
Right. Thank you, Prof. Gachi. Let me wrap up with you. Jonathan as well. Quickly, your final words, Jonathan. Hello, Jonathan. Okay, I think I've lost him.
Hello.
Oh, all right, Jonathan. Yeah, your final words, please. Okay, Jonathan is off, but let me have Dr. Kabiru also tell me his final words before we wrap up. Dr. Bawumia mentioned one e-levy just once in the statement. People are not happy about it.
Yeah, thank you. Before I come to that, I just want to know that government position has not been inconsistent, and that to say that we've had inconsistency in the position is not true. It's just based on the context. That's why when I started the submission, I asked you, when you are discussing the economy, which variable are you looking at? So you don't just slam the whole economy and blame it on one factor. There are a myriad of factors that affect that determine economic mechanism. So depending on the factor we discuss, and you look at the causal relationship therein, then we also have an issue about banking sector. It says it's a choice. I'm quite surprised that, the finance person will say it's a choice when you have there was no choice but to protect the depositors. The hard earning of the welfare of the Ghana is the most important thing. You couldn't have, unless of course you said let everything collapse. Both banks and then customers will suffer. So that was, a decision that needs to be taken. But don't put it to be the government could have done without it. It means the government would have reneged in the responsibility that has been entrusted on that particular government.
The government protected an amount of 4.6 billion savings with 26 million savings.
Not savings.
Billion.
Not savings, depositors. You are talking of people, not.
Yes, but that's your savings.
Not savings. When you talk of savings,
this was captured in the finance.
The finance minister said that the savings of 1.6 billion people, not the amount, not the value of money. So let's get the difference clear. Because each person would have been saving probably $1 billion or 100 million. So let's get, it's not even an individual, but corporate, yes.
Okay.
So that is the context we need to put. Government is taking responsibility for everything. And as part of the responsibility, you have the responsibility of explaining to the people what you are facing and what you are doing to address them. So this, I don't think we shouldn't be in contention about. Government is very forthright with this particular information, and it's just that sometimes the analysts pick and choose. And of course, for the purpose of debate and purpose of making your point, you may play deaf and blind to other factors and pick one that you think you can go to market with. So that is it. But on the issue of, taxes, the Vice President mentioned taxes and mentioned the e-levy as one of the taxes that has been imposed. I don't know what people wanted him to say beyond that.
For tax that's been passed into law, bill that's been passed into law already.
Yeah, it's been passed into law. So what
I support.
Support in law can also be extrapolated. So either way, I think the Vice President wouldn't have been relevant.
Right. We'll do this more some other time. Dr. Kabir Mahama is technical advisor to Vice President. He joined us in the studio. I also had Professor John Kachi, who is the Dean of the University of Cape Coast Business School, and also Dr. Patrick Esuming, Jonathan Asante.